We're about to jump into one of the most mysterious, most debated verses in the entire Bible. It's this single sentence from the book of Revelation that talks about a massive global deception, some strange miracles, and a command to build an image that, well, it comes to life. So what on earth does it all mean? Let's get into it.
So here it is, Revelation 13, verse 14. You can see it right there. It talks about a worldwide deception, and it's powered by miracles, convincing all of humanity to create an image. And this image is dedicated to a beast that had this mortal wound but somehow survived. I mean, it's a real puzzle, one that has fascinated and, let's be honest, confused people for centuries. So what is this ancient warning really pointing to? Are we talking about a literal statue? Or maybe a powerful political system? Could it even be some kind of global religious movement? To even start answering that, we've got to go back to the original text and really understand the specific words the author chose to use.
All right, so let's look at this verse for what it is, at its core. A really strange and cryptic command. Some powerful entity is telling the people of the earth to do something very, very specific. And understanding that command, that's our first step.
Now, the source material we're digging into today makes a strong case that the key to unlocking this whole mystery isn't just in our modern translations. Nope, the real clues are buried in the specific Greek words that were originally used.
So, let's put on our linguistic detective hats for a minute and break down three absolutely crucial words from that original text. First up, we've got the word for deceiveth, planao. And what's really interesting about this is that it implies a deliberate, active process. This is not about people just getting it wrong or making a mistake. It's about a force that is actively leading them astray, making them wander off the path of truth.
Next, there's the word for miracles, semeion. See, in a biblical context, a sign or a miracle isn't just some random display of power. It's more like a performance, something that's meant to prove a point, to validate a message or a messenger. So these miracles are essentially being used as counterfeit proof to back up the deception.
And finally, we get to the main event, the image, or icon. Now, this can definitely mean a literal statue, but its meaning is broader. It can also mean a likeness or a representation. The command is to create something that reflects the very character and nature of the beast. Okay, so now that we have these linguistic building blocks, what kind of picture do they actually create? Well, the source material argues that these clues don't point to a literal statue at all, but to a massive, worldwide counterfeit system.
According to this interpretation, the image isn't a statue. It's a counterfeit religion, a whole system that mimics the rituals, the language, the appearance of true worship, but deep down, at its heart, it's just a man-made imitation designed to honor the beast, not God.
And this comparison really gets to the core of it. True worship, as it's described, is led by the Spirit and founded on truth. But this counterfeit system, it's propped up by deceptive miracles, it's centered on a worldly power, and it's validated by the very lies it's built on.
And that brings us to the most crucial question. Where is the power actually coming from? In this counterfeit system, the signs and wonders are self-authenticating. You see, they don't point to God. They exist only to prove the system's own authority, completely cut off from any divine source.
Now, this idea, this concept of a beautiful religious-looking system that's actually a hollow imitation, it isn't new at all. The Bible is actually filled with warnings about this exact kind of hypocrisy. I mean, just think about the story of the golden calf, right? While Moses was up on the mountain getting the law from God, the people down below got impatient. They demanded a visible, tangible God they could see and control. So what did they do? They created an image, a substitute for the real thing. And Jesus himself confronted this head-on. He actually called the religious leaders of his day serpents and vipers. Why? Because on the outside they looked like the gatekeepers of truth, but in reality they were twisting it for their own power, kind of like the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
He used this really powerful analogy of whitewashed tombs. You know, from the outside, they look clean, pure, beautiful, but inside, they're full of death and decay. It is the perfect metaphor for a system that has the form of religion, but none of the life.
Okay, this brings us to the last and maybe weirdest piece of the puzzle. The beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. I mean, how can something be mortally wounded and yet still be alive and active? So this interpretation identifies the sword that delivered that wound not as a literal weapon, but as the Word of God. The argument is that the truth of the gospel, especially the message of the cross, it dealt a fatal blow to this whole deceptive system by exposing its lies for what they were.
But here's the paradox. Even though it was spiritually defeated, the system itself didn't just vanish. The verse says it did live, so it continues to operate in the world, just repackaged for new generations. Wounded, for sure, but still influencing humanity.
You know, this verse from 2 Timothy just perfectly captures that idea. It describes people or systems that have the outward appearance, the form, of godliness, but it totally deny its true transformative power. It's a shell, an image without the substance.
So after digging into the language, the interpretation, and these historical parallels, we're left with this really powerful takeaway. The warning in Revelation 13, it might not just be about some distant future event, but about a present reality, the challenge of telling the counterfeit from the real. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. If the most convincing deceptions are the ones that look the most like the truth, how do we ever learn to see the difference?